we need to get organized, set up this organization. We need to unify all the Afrocentric people in this village, in this Toronto, and look at it as a global initiative. It has to be a global initiative. It can't just be about Jane and Finch. It must be about Jane and Finch, the 13 priority neighborhoods, but it runs across Canada to Nova Scotia. And once we set this up, we will be ready to start planning in the next 10 to 20 years to have people going into Africa to develop solar energy, to go into Africa to do the great things that we need.
That's only caused because we won't own what is ours. Yeah. That's all it is. You know, we have something and we're not putting our name on it, so people are coming and say, what, is this yours? It says Africa on it. And you're saying, I'm not an African. And they're like, oh, there's some good stuff. I'm a white African.
With us moving in the future, we can start to begin to focus more on our homeland as far as where we came from as African people and stop fighting over islands and places where we've been dropped off at. Focus more on where we were taken from.
My brothers and sisters, my mothers and fathers in abroad, we should come home. This is where we belong to, and this is our roots. So we should come home and help develop our place to be a better place for us to be. That is why the Akan language is the Sankofa. No matter what we do, we are black, and this is Africa. This is where we are from. So we should come back and help build a better Africa. So
right now, because of the different countries, the division which is in Africa, then the invader or the European, he can come through any area he chooses. If there is unity and one government, then he can only come through one avenue. So the objective for Africa is to develop the presidency of Africa.
Emancipate yourself from mental slavery, not ourselves, and free our minds. Have no fear of atomic energy. None of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing this song of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs, all I ever had.
A system has been put in place post-enslavement that has maintained a system of white supremacy and black inferiority, and it certainly is in the economic sphere as well.
We now know that we have what we need from our Black Book. We have the idea of what we need in a center for education. We have the Black Print within the Black Book, and we're going to lay it out today. As an African people, when the Arabs invaded Africa and the Europeans invaded Africa, they implanted their miseducation in our memory. And today, as African people, we don't have our natural education. We don't know ourselves. As a matter of fact, from kindergarten, or not so kind garden, they begin with the nursery crimes. And after nursery crimes, they bring our children to elementary school where they don't learn nothing elemental. They then bring them to middle school where nothing is in the middle except the middle passage. And when they take the high school, they haven't learned anything higher. And now we're in a mental institution called post-secondary of higher learning. And all I'm saying to my African people, an education comes from a word from Latin mean educare, to bring out, to take out of, to bring in. And if you're not at the center of your education, you're at the center of someone else. And as an African people in this world, in this time, we've been at the center of a Eurocentric paradigm of miseducation. And so we need to reclaim what it is to be an African, what it means to have an African education. So as such, we're talking about setting up a center, state-of-the-art center for education.
Well, if we're talking about education, you have to start in schools. Is there enough knowledge in our schools about the slave trade? I would say not, especially in the Canadian context. Children grew up in this environment thinking there wasn't even slavery. And for them to think that means they weren't told from a very early age that this thing existed. This evil thing that was done to our peoples existed. And it existed here in Canada. Yes, they will hear about the Underground Railroad, but did they hear about the other things that happened in Canada, in and around people of color?
African-centered education, if it's actually a focus, can actually change the whole school system. We should actually look at it as a pilot, actually, to changing or revolutionizing the school system as a whole.
A people without a knowledge of their history might end up repeating slavery. History is a landmark of time. Don't know it and be left behind. What will history say of you? When it is written, will it be true? You have the power to write, will decide your fate. Your history in your hands, prevent self-hate. So I say to you, wake up and see. Make history guide your destiny. Inspiration without information leads us to superstition. A people without a knowledge of their past is like a tree without root. Who gave us the leaves and all the bad fruit? He who has the power to write will decide your fate. Your history in your hands, prevent self-hate.
Everybody thinks our history is the slavery and slave trade. No, we had majestic, powerful kingdoms way before slavery. And our kids need to understand that. And they also need to know what we're doing today. We have black people that are involved in invention, scientists doing tremendous work that we never hear about.
We must know about Queen Tai. We must know about the great leader of ancient Kemet, Queen Hatshepsut. Africans never had problems with their women leading because our woman was part of who we were. We must know these things. We must know our historical reference point so no nation can say we didn't contribute to world civilization.
We have a history of the past, and our history is a continuum. It's never stopped. We've never stopped innovating, regardless of what the circumstances that we've been involved with, including the African Holocaust. So this is just showing that it's a continuum, and but it's also fun, interactive, and educational.